Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch this podcast. Yes, this is not the normal setup, but we are we are adapting and overcoming. Out here in Oklahoma, out here in the small town of Elgin, about 3,000, about 30 minutes away from Fort Sill, my new home for at least a year. For in the army, they're unable to get us internet until August 7th, but wherever there's a cell phone and some reception, there is a way. So told the wife after dinner that I'm just gonna go driving around and finding some cell reception. So we are here live outside the Elgin Dollar General, just making it work, talking about Mac football with and I don't want to delay this conversation any further because it's already been such a long time since we've had Alex on the podcast. But Alex Scheer of the MSC podcast joins. Thank you so much for joining, Alex, and just being flexible. I know there's a snafu, but it's just great. Like these are the links that I want to go to just to talk to you and talk Mac football with you.
Well, I'm always humbled when I get asked to be on a podcast, whether it be with you, Omar, whether it be, whoever it is. I'm always humbled because that means I've convinced enough people that I know more about the Mac than anybody else, and they keep wanting to have me on. And I'll be honest, I feel like I probably know less about the Mac than anybody else. But you guys keep being convinced that I've done something right. So as always, it's an honor to be on here with you, man, and to talk some action.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Honestly, I'll think about that whenever people invite me on podcasts too. But honestly, I don't sell yourself short. Like you're like one of the leading voices of the Mac that I see on the timeline. Your podcast is amazing work, and shoot, you even have an app too. I don't know how many other Group of Five conference voices have their own app too.
Working on it. It's that's gone under a massive overhaul. And actually, this week I'll be doing some coding to make some tweaks to get some APIs loaded in to really test some of the live scoring. Really excited to get that going. I'm going to be trying to really dial it up and bring some live scoring to this thing and really give people an alternative, especially Mac fans, an alternative to ESPN, because it's really easy to look up ESPN football scores for Toledo, Ohio. But it's really hard to find baseball scores, volleyball
Oh, wow.
scores. So if I can gift you that and put that into your hands, I think that gives the Mid American Conference a game changer, just from a fan perspective, but also kind of potentially could force ESPN's hand a little bit to say, hey, you're losing customers because you don't have this product available. So my hope is to disrupt the industry a little bit with that app, and we'll keep pushing it.
Yeah, honestly, that's great. That's great to hear. I mean, because a lot of the non-revenue sports, and we talked about this before with the work you've done, I mean, they get left behind. I didn't realize that, which is the simple scoring apps, simple just like score tracking apps, just forget about the non-revenue sports. Of course, I'm not a big baseball guy, not a big
They don't
non-revenue
forget
sport.
about the SEC. I want to be clear.
Okay, they don't. Okay, so I,
They
I
give you
mean,
SEC baseball, but not MAC baseball. So
okay, that's par for the course. So that I guess it makes sense. I mean, me not being a college baseball guy or college softball guy, you could have told me otherwise that like no college conferences are on there. But if it's the SEC, it's there. It makes a lot. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because
mhm.
we can go into I mean, shoot, like, yeah. I'd rather move on than have a bad taste in my mouth. Because it's a domino effect. We got other networks creating on-air fanboys just to combat the SEC propaganda machine. It's a crazy time. But of course, as per usual on the podcast with with my guests, like I always find time just to have like I guess these tangents with anything. So here we are already less than 4 minutes in. But going on to our first topic of discussion for the podcast for this episode. So Cleveland is getting a new football stadium. I'm not sure exactly when the exact timetable is, but it is coming soon, and it will be an indoor stadium, sadly, which means one thing that it's the end of an era, but also means two, it's another prospective venue for the MAC championship game, which of course has been at Ford Field ever since 2004. This will be the 22nd time that it's at the Detroit Lions home. But something that we talked about before going live was the fact that the MAC has done constant 1 year contracts with Ford Field. And of course, it seems like a formality, these contracts, because we all know that the MAC championship game is going to be in Detroit year in, year out. But I know that that I mentioned before that I think it's genius for the various stadium situations that happen in the conference's footprint or former footprint, because we talked about Chicago. I want to say it was like early 2024 when the Bears were going through that snafu and them potentially hosting the MAC championship game. But Alex, what are your thoughts on Cleveland being a potential MAC championship game host? I mean, and it's maybe even more so like a bowl host.
Yeah, so I think a couple things you have to kind of keep in mind when it comes to hosting a college football championship. Number one, Ford Field has been trying to get the Big Ten championship for a while. So there's been a desire to host a bigger event. Um, and I respect that. You know, you always want to show off your facilities, you want to show off your venue, give people something exciting to to look forward to. A new city, you know, obviously the Big Ten championship is in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil, but I think you know you get an opportunity to show off a new venue to a new variety of people. You attract more fans that way. And with Ford Field, you know, we've seen a heavy bevel of Mac fans from actually every Mac program in the conference except for Eastern Michigan have seen their team play in the MAC championship. UMass obviously has not, but and they are officially in the conference now. But so it's been no UMass, no EMU. Every fan in the conference that's wanted an opportunity to go to Ford Field has had that opportunity. Now you present an opportunity to go to a new venue, right? You know, if there's an opportunity for the MAC to get a championship in Cleveland, it feels like that makes a little bit more sense because you got a couple things going on. You're losing Northern Illinois, so now you're losing your westernmost school, um, and you've added a Northeast program. So the geographical center of your conference shifts east a little bit. Right now, the geographical center of the conference is about Toledo, Ohio. That's you if you throw a dart towards the center, you're almost going to land on Toledo. Pretty much every time. Now that's shifting a little bit. So you drop the Chicago time zone, you pick up the Boston area. That shifts about 2 hours east. That puts Cleveland at the center of the geographical center of the conference. So I think there's a lot of value in hosting that. The MAC offices are in Cleveland, Ohio. So then you've got the MAC offices readily available. It's a new venue. You know, fans of the Browns excited for an opportunity to have a new venue. Fans of the conference who let's say you get Kent State back there, you get Akron back to the championship. Those fans are going to be a lot more willing to drive to Cleveland for a championship than they are to Detroit. And not saying that they didn't have great fans. You know, the 2021 MAC championship game between NIU and Kent State, great fan turnout. Kent State really showed out. But think about how many more of those fans show out if that game is in Cleveland. How many more of those fans show out if that game is an hour drive versus a 3.5 hour drive? So then you're bringing people to the Cleveland market. You're providing monetary value, a multiple $1 million financial impact, tourist impact to the city because people don't think about it. Yes, you're buying food and you're buying tickets, but you're buying food, which is paying for jobs. You're getting food and drinks either before or after the game. Some people you're staying in hotels, so that's more financial impact that way. And then on top of that, you're adding something simple as stopping and getting gas at the gas station in Cleveland. You know, those little things when you bring 18 to 20,000 people into town, that adds up. That adds up very quickly. And then again, like I said, the hotel rooms, let's say it's UMass versus Ball State, right? You know, there's one of those teams is staying the night. Um, Probably both, and they're probably staying multiple nights. So you're just adding a lot of extra layers to this. That'll be financial benefits, and that's something that Detroit has really been able to enjoy. And Cleveland with a dome stadium, that's going to be part of their thing. They want to host championships. They want to host. You know, I've heard a little bit of talk of hosting the Ohio High School Football Championship if they get this approved. So you know, there's a lot of talk of what could be that because Ohio doesn't have any domed football stadiums, they've missed out on several potential opportunities. And I think now you bring in a dome to the state of Ohio, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the whole event aspect, especially for a city like Cleveland, which doesn't have anything really from a sports perspective, I guess from a sporting event, like special sporting event perspective, aside from your pro teams and the MAC basketball tournaments, I
Mhm.
mean, there really isn't much there to bring that extra influx of cash, which is an amazing point. I also think it's interesting too, because just looking back, like Cleveland, I mean, the various stadiums in the NFL, like they'll host a college game here and there, but the Cleveland Browns Stadium or whatever it's called, whatever sponsor it is, their stadium hasn't hosted an FBS game since I believe it was 2009 when Toledo played Ohio State in
Mhm.
that weird Toledo home game at the Browns Stadium. Which I mean, that's probably the only non-conference I guess well, actually, no. It's not going to be. It's not the only non-conference road game against a group of five that Ohio State's. But they played Navy technically on the road in Baltimore. But
Mhm.
I mean, Cleveland hasn't tried again. But needless to say, like Cleveland hasn't tried again with the college game that would bring local tourism, that would bring tourism from afar. Because I remember too as a kid, Army played Akron there in 2007
Mhm.
at the Browns Stadium. So that's, events like that just bring so much tourism, bring local tourism, which is honestly the easiest tourism to bring. It's hard to ask people to book to hop on flights a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, such as bowl season, but asking them just to drive a few hours and just to make the leap, it's much easier. So this is great for the city of Cleveland, especially since they really haven't tried with these special events. I also think it's interesting too, like you said, that every MAC school except Eastern Michigan. I know the Eagles caught a little bit of a stray there, for not being able to make the MAC championship game for the past 22 years.
Sorry, EMU.
I mean, like they found other ways. They found other ways to make it to Ford Field. But I kind of feel like the charm is kind of worn off, like you said, and it's like, I guess for instance, a school like you said, like Kent State making it twice in that period. I'm sure the only thing that's left for them is to actually win, but otherwise fans have been there, done that, for lack of a better term. Same thing
Mhm.
with a school like Buffalo that just made it. I think it's three times, two times where fans were able to attend, where it's like you've been there, done that, like you said. So I think it's great. I think it's just great for Cleveland. And I would like to see it at some point too, just because of just the lack of special college football events in the city. And I think too another note that I'll add before I guess I wrap a bow on my thoughts on this topic is that I think it takes a strain off the Game Above Sports Bowl. I almost said Quick Lane
Mhm.
Bowl. It was over a decade, but the Game Above Sports Bowl, because a lot of times the Game Above Sports Bowl I think is handcuffed in the amount and the type and the teams that they can pick, just because you have two teams that have played in the MAC championship game as it is. And if one of those schools is a Michigan school, then that limits your options further. But if you have a bowl game in, or if okay, there we go. Okay, it's complications, but yeah, the championship flexibility to pick the same. A team from Ohio that did well over during the season, or I mean, or even the MAC champion. They're not having to play in Detroit 2 weeks in a row. So just of course, like, I always got to bring the bowl game and the bowl implications into it. But uh, I see nothing but great benefits. I would love to see an alternating pattern though, if
Mhm.
Cleveland were able to make this work out.
So I think something that you have to look at. The Mac has to be very. Um, I don't want to say aggressive in pursuing this. They already host a great championship tournament in Cleveland for the basketball championship. Um, I think one of the benefits of the Mid American Conference is that they are the only FBS non power conference that hosts neutral site basketball and football championships. And there's something to be said for that. There is a lot of value in that, and there's financial value. The city of Detroit provides a lot of financial assistance to the MAC championship. City of Cleveland does the same thing for the MAC tournament. So you got to make sure that you're not dipping into one well too many times. I do like the idea of having them potentially rotate the championship, but I've always been a big fan of the fact that it is in Detroit. Yeah, as you mentioned, and as we kind of talked about, it gets a little lackluster for these teams who have been there for goodness knows, have been there several times. But I think that there's a lot of value to the fact that a team can go back and back again and again and again, and it's familiar. You know what it's like. I do think though, if they do end up hosting a MAC championship in Cleveland, I can guarantee who one of the teams will be. And one of them will be the Toledo Rockets, and here's why. Toledo has been notorious for being part of a lot of historical moments in college football history. One, Toledo played in the first ever overtime football game in the Las Vegas Bowl. Toledo won that game. Two, Toledo played in the first ever college football game at Ford Field against Boston College in 2002. Three, Toledo played in the first ever MAC football championship at Ford Field in 2004. Toledo has been in a lot of really random pieces of history. So if Cleveland hosts a MAC championship in football, money's pretty solid that the Rockets are going to be at least one of the teams in that championship game.
Okay, so don't mind the jarring cut. Already bracing for impact there due to technical difficulties. But yeah, Alex, I thought you were just being a homer when you said you knew what team was going to play in the first in the first MAC championship game in Cleveland if it does happen. I thought you were being a homer, knowing that you are a Toledo graduate and everything. But that's a great point. I just never really thought of all those all those firsts that they took part in.
They're also the
But
first MAC team to beat Michigan, so
oh yeah,
we could
yeah,
throw
that's
that
that
out there
too.
too.
Yeah, that one. So it upsets me how much people forget about that game because that was arguably a bigger upset than App State Michigan because at Toledo, like I'm not even gonna act snobby about that. Like App State 2007 App State beats Toledo on a neutral field like 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. But people forget about it. So that's a forgotten upset. It truly is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's but yeah, so I think there'd be a lot of benefit to it. But we'll see. It's I know that there are people in the state of Ohio not too happy about the idea of the Browns getting a new indoor stadium. There's some controversy about it coming from unclaimed funds in the state of Ohio, whether that be through tax refunds, whatever it may be. So there's some pushback on that from Ohio constituents, but neither here nor there. Not to get overtly political. I think a stadium like that there's a lot of potential for the state and for the city of Cleveland.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, of course, too, just one more thing, like the elimination of divisions in the MAC allows for an all Ohio championship game as well as it does allow for an all Michigan championship game, which has not happened yet in the Detroit era or the short divisionless era, but definitely something that also strengthens the case for a Ohio MAC championship game. But
Well, I
staying
will
up,
I will tell you, we've actually had three straight all Ohio MAC championships.
okay, okay, yeah,
Um,
so wow, yeah.
so we've had Miami, Ohio last year. The Bobcats won 38-3. Miami, Toledo the year before, and then Toledo, Ohio, the year before that. So we have had several all Ohio championships, but we've never had an all Michigan championship, and I think that would be the big one right there.
Yeah, absolutely for the Ford Field era if it continues in the long term. But staying in the Buckeye State with probably the biggest news this whole month in terms of the MAC and probably the Group of Five. Well, not the Group of Five. In terms of the MAC, I mean, no one was like the MAC was not roped into the whole Pac-12 Sun Belt Mountain West fiasco until last week, or shoot, time goes by so fast. Might even been like more than a week ago, but
Mm-hmm.
very recently, Shane Metlin, great writer from Austin, mentioned that Ohio had preliminary conversations with the Sun Belt, which I don't think anyone saw that domino falling. And now the reactions have been anywhere from disbelief to caution and panic. So Alex, I'm just gonna let you just go stream of consciousness about that for however long you want.
I think there's where there's smoke, there's fire, but I don't know that there's any smoke here. Um, I think there's also where there's smoke, there's fire, but there can be manufactured smoke by a third party. Um, from what I've come to understand, a lot of this seems to have stemmed from a message board post from somebody from James Madison. Somebody took it and ran with it. It sounds like there was some sort of conversation, and I don't know what the conversation all entailed. I can tell you this, though. Part of the reason why, at least per Northern Illinois fans, part of the reason why they're leaving is their fan base has been destroyed by midweek football. Um, I think that's a really tough argument to make when we did see that their fans showed out during the mid or early to mid 2010 era when they were Orange Bowl contenders, when they were having their undefeated seasons. Their fans showed out in droves during midweek games. I feel like that's a hard argument, but I don't think you can deny the fact that we've seen attendance decreases across the conference, especially in November, when the games get played in the middle of the week. And I think that's just one of the dominoes. The Mac Media deal, which was signed in 2014, one of the longest deals in the country. And at the time, it was actually a really quality deal for the Group of Five, or I guess the term then was non-autonomous conferences or non-auto qualifying conferences. It was actually a pretty good deal at the time. The MAC schools all make about $750,000 to $800,000 a year off of ESPN rights. Fans have been upset about the idea of playing football on midweek games for essentially peanuts, and games that aren't even played on ESPN. They're played on CBS Sports Network or ESPN Plus. So there's a lot of frustration with that, and that is all completely valid. I'm never going to be one to invalidate that. I think something has to give with the MAC. I will always be a big supporter of midweek college football. I think the novelty of midweek action has worn off. Um, you know, for what the MAC gets paid, I think that there is more value to holding the games on Saturdays and just streaming them all on ESPN Plus. Then at least you have people in the stands. The other argument, especially if you're in a city like a Toledo or a Buffalo, where you're a fan and you live in that city, it's not that hard to drive across Toledo on a Tuesday night. Having lived there, I can tell you it's not. It's not that hard to drive across Toledo on a Tuesday night to watch college football. It is a little harder when most Northern Illinois alum don't live in DeKalb. They live in Chicago. They live elsewhere. A little bit harder to make that 45 to an hour drive on a Tuesday night. So I'm willing to concede that. I think that any argument where Ohio leaves is a little bit silly unless it's for the American Athletic, or, and I'm just going to say it, dreaming big here, the Big 12. I think an argument for Toledo would be for the American or the Big 12. I don't think Ohio and Toledo have the facility and resources to be in the Big 12. I think if they're going to make a move, it's going to have to be the AAC. The Sun Belt, when everybody talks about, the Sun Belt takes home this. I pulled up the numbers. The Sun Belt media deal is even worse than the MAC's. In fact, of the Sun Belt, Conference USA, and the MAC has the best media deal of the three. When it comes to payout from the media provider. Now, there are other things, where these other schools get bumps from bowl games or bumps from NCAA tournament. Those are not media bumps. Those are tournament bumps, which are much different. And somebody was trying to argue with me about Sun Belt teams make $2 million. They might. You're probably correct. They probably do, but they don't make $2 million a school from their media deal. That is verifiable information per propublica.org. You can look up their tax filings and you can see how much each conference makes from the TV rights deal. So of the three, the MAC has the best deal. The MAC's deal also expires in 27. You just lost the Chicago market, a big market in terms of media, but now you're picking up the Boston market. And I think something else I kind of want to address too. Yes, Northern Illinois fans, I don't think you're wrong on this. A lot of people in Chicago cheer and support Northern Illinois. If you walk up to a random person in Chicago, I'm willing to bet that they're going to say that they follow Northwestern a little bit closer. I would put money on that, and that's not to discredit Northern Illinois. That's to say, you've got Northwestern right there. Northwestern is right there, pretty much in Chicago. That's the nature of it. So I don't know how much value the Chicago market brings to the Mountain West. Just like I don't know that it brought as much value to the MAC as people think it brought. Just like I don't know that the Boston market, not the TV market, not the restaurant, is going to bring to the MAC, because Amherst is not in Boston. It's about an hour. So, I feel like we're dropping a Chicago adjacent market. Yes, you're in the bubble, but you're not the dominant scene in Chicago, just like UMass isn't the dominant scene in Boston. There's value for both, but I don't think it's as much value as either bring. That being said, the MAC has to convince ESPN that getting the Boston market or the Boston market adjacent brings an incredible amount of value to the MAC, whether it's true or not. They have to convince them that it does. I think adding UMass overall is massively beneficial, both competitively outside of football, but they're working on the football thing. But also, it's a whole new recruiting ground. It's a whole new layer of, potential Power Four upsets. It's a whole new layer of, hey, now Toledo may get access to go play UConn in basketball. The Ohio Bobcats might get to do a home and home with Boston College. Boston University needs an opponent. Hey, Western Michigan, you play in the same conference as UMass. Let's work out something. So there's a lot of value for the MAC to get into that Northeast market competitively as well. Once you get out to Chicago, you don't have much until you get to Iowa. And then you get to the Dakotas, where there's FCS football. Great football, national championship football, but it's FCS football, and that's a hard sell. And then you get to the mountain. So there's a lot of additional condensed value from Boston, and I think the MAC needs to really hone in on that. All of that being said, I think that the MAC needs to be very aggressive during this next shuffling of conferences. Conference USA is the conference that's kind of getting picked on a little bit. We just saw the Texas State go out west to the Pac-12. We saw Conference USA get kind of picked alive during the last conference realignment. They survived it. They elevated a lot of FCS programs. Just brought in Delaware and Missouri State. I think Delaware would have been a great addition with UMass to the MAC. Different story for a different time. I think there's got to be something for the MAC to do right now, and there are fans out there who will disagree with this entirely. Both MAC fans and the fans of the schools I'm going to list. I think you absolutely, if you're the Mid-American Conference, if I'm John Steinbrecher right now, I am calling my ADs and I'm saying, what do we need to do to get Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee to join this league? And then you call up the chancellor or the athletic director at Western Kentucky and the president at Western Kentucky, the president at Middle Tennessee. Right now, you say, look, you guys are about to get hit with another round of realignment. Do you guys want to be part of that and move to a little bit more stability? We can offer that. We can bring you in. That extends our footprint to the southern market. That gives you northern competition. I think Western Kentucky more than Middle Tennessee fits the footprint of the MAC. Um, Middle Tennessee, God love them, God love the Raiders, but I don't know that they fit that profile as well. I feel like they are more Sun Belt Conference USA AAC, and that's just because of where Memphis is at. And I think you look at that as well. So I think you could probably get both and get to 14 now that Northern Illinois is leaving. But I think you have to be, this is the time to not sit back. I think if I'm John Steinbrecher, I say, hey, let's get these guys on board. Let's figure it out. They were close 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Now what do we do? What do we do to get this to happen? Where do we need to sign? Where do we have you sign? Let's get this thing signed, sealed, and delivered. Let's make a move. Let's get to 14 teams and let's be the premier G5 conference. Right now, competitively, the MAC at the top competes with anybody in the G5. At the bottom, not so much. But I think if you continue to add to the top and raise the profile of the top, the bottom eventually gets better. You're playing these guys consistently. You're going to get better. Akron, we've seen under Joe Moorhead, has started to turn around. Kent State, they have been in, let's just call it purgatory, football purgatory since Sean Lewis left. But I think Kent State, they're going to be doing something a little bit different. Coach Carney is going to do a really great job as the interim. I have a lot of faith in him after the Kenny Burns fallout. But I think outside of those two at the bottom, this is a relatively competitive league, top to bottom three quarters of the conference. You add more power and more strength to it, it all gets better.
Yeah, I mean, your thoughts,
I said a
honestly.
lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just don't know where to start, honestly. But I will say too, I think something that aligns with what you're saying in terms of the max strength is the public, I guess, the PR campaign that the MAC lacks compared to the Sun Belt. Because I mean, honestly, like growing up as a college football fan, I mean, and just like both of us just experiencing just the history of the Sun Belt, like
Mm-hmm.
we both remember when the Sun Belt had one bowl game a year, was an afterthought conference, had, sure, there was Maction in the mid 2000s, early 2010s, but the Sun Belt would have maybe one or two, weeknight games in general on ESPN linear channels, and the rest were on ESPN 360.com back in those days. But I think the Sun Belt has done an amazing job, whether it be, I don't even know if it's official conference channels or just the voices of the fans of those teams just speaking out and showing that their conference has grown a lot of years, which is honestly, I think that is the main reason why the smoke from Ohio going to the Sun Belt came, because of the public relations campaign that the fans, conference figures even have launched with the Sun Belt, being okay, this is a legitimate number one or number two. I know they're trying to compete with the American, but number two they have an argument against Mountain West, number two Group of Five conference. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the MAC lacks that, because first thing off the top of my head is 2023 Toledo. That had to be the quietest 11-1 season I've seen in my life, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the MAC did much to promote that team, a team that was a field goal away from beating Illinois, or at least, yeah, a field goal away from beating Illinois
A
in regulation.
crazy fourth down conversion from beating Illinois. That's really what I was at that game. Illinois converted, they converted an unbelievable fourth down catch to set up the game-winning field goal. A catch where the quarterback himself even admitted, "I didn't see where my receiver was. I threw
Oh,
it."
okay.
So yeah, no, that was a really great year for Toledo.
Yeah.
But you're right; it felt really quiet outside of the MAC circle.
Yeah, exactly. And even on that point too, like I think a couple years ago when Ohio beat Iowa State, very
Mm-hmm.
quiet group of five over P5 upset. I just don't think the MAC has the voices. Like the teams are there in the MAC. Toledo, there's a reason why the Mountain West wanted Toledo. They wanted Northern Illinois, and they got Northern Illinois ultimately. But I just don't think the PR campaign is there. So I think that's the first step the MAC should take to protect itself, should defections come, but I agree with you. I don't think that's going to come because, like you said, I was very shocked to see that the Sun Belt isn't making close to 2 million a year, which I don't even know where that figure came from in the first place. You know, when the tax
Yeah.
returns were brought up, like that's crazy. I'd never seen tax returns for a conference pulled out in a conference realignment craze, but the receipts were there. But I do
I
agree.
learned the Northern Illinois left that I need to start coming to battle with the receipts. So I said, we're gonna have these ready to go.
Yeah, so I mean that was like honestly insane. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the timeline. But I think just addressing that too. I think the MAC needs a better PR campaign, and I think the jury of course is still out with UMass. You know, joining the league, which hopefully I do think that they can, because honestly any team can go from rags to riches in the transfer portal era. UMass too is a testament to that because last year they had a few close games against some really good teams, almost beat Miami on the road. Um, they were, you know, like missed field goals away from beating Miami. Heartbreaking loss. And then they almost beat Liberty as well at home. But that's a team under Don Brown that was very transfer heavy, very Power Five transfer heavy, which it just shows that even with UMass, they made great progress having good Power Five slash Power Four transfers. So, like you said, like with the MAC already having the the DNA it has as being a very good conference top to bottom where any team can win it. I think the jury is definitely still out on UMass. We shouldn't write them off. And like you said, it definitely adds a good competitive advantage in multiple sports as well. Where for I think I made the remark on the timeline, you know, month ago, a few weeks ago about wow, like this is probably one of the best non-conference men's basketball slates I've seen for a MAC school in general. All these MTEs, all these multi-team events, like the big name ones, they know of UMass, even if it's just because of a stretch in the '90s with Coach Cal,
Mhm.
and you know a couple good years in the 2000s and the A10. Like that does a lot for the MAC in men's basketball and women's basketball.
Yes.
You know, for them to get those good games, like you said, like where they're playing a UConn, where they're playing just those schools by association. That being said, too, the Western Kentucky Middle Tennessee courtship is a very contentious topic. I just don't know. So for me, I'm actually gonna go live talking about tonight. I guess just a solo talk, just talking about Western Kentucky, and their plight and how it relates to sort of Pac-12
Hmm.
Mountain West drama. But I think for them, I think for Western Kentucky right now, I think there's more value in them being, um, and I'm getting a notice about my signal, but I think there's more value in Western Kentucky being a big fish in a little pond in Conference USA and sort of dominating that league as long as there's a good amount of members for stability than just outright chain of conferences, which I'm sure you'll have a rebuttal for that. But again, if that courtship ever goes through, I mean that'll be great for the league. That's a great first step for the league to be aggressive and expand their bounds a little bit.
So so for me, I think when you look at what so I think to your point about Western Kentucky being big fish in a little pond, I think Conference USA does a really nice job with getting teams to be good and kind of be at the top. But what I think we've seen happen is we'll see a team rise up and then they'll fall back down. Rise up, fall back down. Same with the MAC. It feels like every year we have a different champion. In fact, we've had a different champion every year since 2011, 2012, the last repeat champion, Northern Illinois. So I think, but I think what happens is then we get a few teams in Conference USA who just stay up. Western Kentucky feels like one of those teams. Yes, they don't win the championship every year, but they're constantly in the conversation. You know, how great, and with all due respect, this is not no disrespect thrown to anybody in Conference USA, but how much better is the conversation when it says Western Kentucky playing Toledo for the MAC championship versus Western Kentucky is going to play Kennesaw State, Missouri State. There's a lot of power behind even mid-tier name brand, and Toledo is a well-known mid-tier name brand. Miami, Ohio, well-known mid-tier name brand. The Ohio Bobcats, and that's why people want them. That's why people want them in other conferences. You didn't hear the Mountain West say, hey, Northern Illinois needs a travel partner. Let's grab Ball State. And I love Ball State. But you didn't hear people say that. You didn't hear them say, hey, let's go grab Missouri State. No, you heard them say, let's grab Toledo. With this Sunbelt chatter, you heard, I think mostly pushed by Herd Bros. Love you, brother. But mostly pushed by Herd Bros. Hey, let's go grab Miami, Ohio, and Toledo. I get it. There's a reason why people wanted Marshall to come out of the MAC. There's power in name brand when you're consistently good. Toledo constantly in the MAC championship discussions. Ohio has been in the constant MAC championship. Miami, same thing. When it comes to basketball, Akron, you're never not going to talk about Akron basketball. You're never not going to talk about Kent State basketball. Yep. There's staying power when you're consistently good. And that's what the MAC is looking for, because Western Kentucky brings a lot of staying power by being pretty good at football, pretty good at basketball, pretty good at, the spring sports, baseball. There's value to that. Conference USA has a valuable commodity. And when you continue to add commodities that are a little bit unknown, like with respect to Kennesaw State, with respect to Missouri State, with respect to Delaware, what has been their biggest success at the FCS level? I think Delaware, saw one playoff game in the last 15 years. I don't know how true that is. That's just what I feel like I remember reading that. But why aren't we grabbing the North Dakotas or the North Dakota States or the South Dakota? That's where your football value is. So I think for me, if you're Conference USA, you're making a slightly bad move, grabbing. If you want to be the premier conference that you want to be, you're not grabbing the North Dakota States, who would immediately contend in the conference and help elevate the profile of the conference. There were rankings last year where North Dakota State was ranked in the, as high as like 85th in the country on the FBS side. There's a lot of value. They would immediately contend, and they would arguably be one of the best group of 6 programs in the country almost on day one. And there's value in that. And I think the value in that is what scares conferences, because they would immediately come in and contend. JMU, look at what they did right away. They came in and immediately, even though they were ineligible, came in and contended. They said, hey, we're going to show up and we're going to beat everybody in the conference. So I think you got to look at the value. You got to look at what makes sense. And I think, if Conference USA or even the MAC wants to be serious, you go grab those value adds. You figure out the logistics and you go grab those value adds. The Dakotas have pretty decent basketball too. They're not any slouches in basketball. So that would be value adds. But I think that's why, if you're the MAC, you want the Western Kentuckys, especially if the Conference USA is going to, I'm not saying they're going to die, but if they're going to go through another realignment shuffle, you go and say, hey, let's do this. That's, I don't know. I think to me, Western Kentucky makes the most sense to add out of anybody. I would really love, and this will upset Herd Bros. Sorry, man. Bring back Marshall. Let's do round 3 with Marshall. Grab Western Kentucky and let's do some dancing. Like, I feel like that would be a lot of fun. And really, if you want, grab some affiliates too. You've got JMU's is a field hockey affiliate. They play really good field hockey. They compete with Miami, who's won the last 12 championships. Feel like that'd be some really good value add, especially because they've got good football too. Bring back Marshall. That would be a lot of fun. Run that back up one more time. But, again, those are all pipe dreams. So anybody, please put your pitchforks away. Don't come in at me. Don't come at Omar. I'm just saying, in my perfect what if scenario, this is what we do. But I think you do look at finding a way to make it work to grab a Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee if you're the MAC, because right now, Conference USA is down to what, 10 teams? I don't want to say be the death blow, but you can't be the ones that everybody's like, oh, who can we pull from the MAC? Who could? No, you've got to be the aggressor here. And the MAC has not done a good job of doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that maybe one more program being poached would probably make the MAC the aggressor. I would think, and I think too. I'm not sure if their stance has changed on affiliate membership for football only, but if there was ever a school for, and this goes to the Pac-12 too as well, which I'm also going to discuss tonight in a solo talk. Like, if there's ever schools to just extend that football only membership to, the North Dakota schools, that is the North Dakota State and South Dakota State, because
Mhm.
I'm not sure if the conference, the MAC would take North Dakota and South Dakota, even though they've been good recently. But if there was ever a reason to have a football only member, North Dakota State is the one. Honestly, North Dakota State and South Dakota State is the one. Let them keep their stuff in the Summit League, and that's totally fine. Figure out a way where they can either subsidize travel or do something. And I think too, there might not even be a need for North Dakota State at least to subsidize travel, because they love playing across the country
Mhm.
in these games. Like, they're playing this year. They're starting this year on the road in back-to-back weeks in Charleston and Nashville. Like, if that doesn't tell you about how the FCS reveres their fan base, the FCS knows that North Dakota State can travel. That is a
Mhm.
message to MAC schools that these teams, like, maybe next TV deal, if you can land a North Dakota State as a football only member, like, maybe we're playing more games on Saturdays. I'll just say that. Maybe we're playing more games on Saturdays because their fans will travel there. They will go. Um, you know, they'll show out. They'll show up and
Mhm.
they'll show out.
They will.
So, I mean, I will say that, and I think we can go all day just with just
Yes, we can.
different strategies. But for me, I'm fascinated in the Northeast route, and potentially opening up a Northeast corridor to the conference. Of course, growing up in Massachusetts and seeing UMass re-enter the conference, I really think, and I know that there's so many people with me on this. I know the Lambert Trophy is back again. There's plenty of the voices from Delaware yearn for a Northeast Group of Five conference. I would love, honestly, for Rhode Island, for me, I know people might come out at me for saying this, but I would have welcomed Ohio getting poached if it would have meant a Rhode Island or a Towson got plucked by the MAC from the CAA to be in the conference and create a Northeast wing where you got a Buffalo, you got UMass, you got Towson, potentially add Delaware in there, and then bam, you have your classic Atlantic 10 Yankee Conference sort of alignment, because I really feel like what we've seen with the CAA on the FCS side with the Coastal Athletic Association is those Northeast schools love their rivalries and they long to be playing their fellow Northeast Northeast compatriots. They like Villanova longs to be playing William and Mary, even though it's more mid-Atlantic. Well, you're William and Mary, you're Richmond. They long to be playing those schools, and the CAA is not the Yankee Conference, the A10 of old. So no better time than to pluck another Northeast school to join the MAC, because if you look at non-conference schedules, like essentially Delaware, UConn, James Madison, those schools are creating the like they're essentially recreating the Yankee Conference on their own through their Northeast schedules. So I mean, at that point, like, why not bring more Northeast FBS schools into the fold? And I mean, there isn't exactly the Boston market there with UMass, but you get a little bit of Providence. You got a flagship school with Rhode Island. If you add Rhode Island, you got a flagship
Mhm.
school right there, and a little bit more of a share of the Boston market. Towson, not so much. But again, you have plenty of graduates across plenty of populous mid Atlantic cities. Baltimore, of course, Washington D.C., potentially even Philadelphia. If you add Towson and then add Delaware too as a package. So I want to know your thoughts about the MAC potentially welcoming a mid Atlantic skew, aside from what we talked about with like the Dakotas and Western Kentucky or Middle Tennessee.
I would really love to see. I would really love to see more Northeast. I mean, at this point, geography doesn't matter for conferences, especially at the FBS level. Geography stopped mattering when the Big Ten said, "Hey, Oregon, you're going to play Rutgers in field hockey." That geography doesn't exist anymore. So I think you say screw it and you be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know about Rhode Island. I was looking at their facilities. They don't seem to have the facilities, and I don't know that they have the money to get them up. I think their football stadium is something like 6,000. I could be wrong, but one of those schools I was looking at, it's a smaller stadium. Even the MAC UMass is coming in at 15,000, and that's going to be tiny compared to, I think Akron has almost 30,000. Kent State's at 21,000, like 22,000. Like they're going to be tiny facilities. So, I think you grab somebody like that. I would love to see UConn. I talk about pipe dreams. I'd love to see UConn do football and then do a scheduling agreement for basketball.
Yep.
And you say, hey, here's our scheduling agreement. You'll play 3 MAC schools in basketball. Helps us elevate our profile, and then keeps you loosely affiliated, but you can stay in the Big East or wherever you want to put your basketball. You put them. You set up a scheduling agreement with basketball. I feel like that'd be really cool, and you do it 3 on the men's side, 3 on the women's side. And I feel like there'd be a lot of value. That would help elevate the MAC's national profile a little bit, because now you get to see Ohio women basketball take on UConn in UConn, but then you see UConn men go and travel to Ball State. I feel like you get more eyeballs because people are curious,
Yep.
not because they're necessarily fans, but they become curious because they're like, what is going on? And that adds value. More eyeballs means more money. But I think the Northeast corridor, there's plenty of opportunities there. Rhode Island, definitely one of them. Delaware State, another one. You've got Vermont. I don't know if they have football at Vermont, but and then Maine. I know they have football. I don't know what that would look like, but there's plenty of opportunities. Find one that makes sense. You have to look at the academics. You have to look at the footprint. You have to look at what makes sense competitively. You have to look at so many factors. Everybody wants to say, oh, it's only about football. Well, that's partially true. You have to look at everything that matters. And I know I'm contradicting my argument from earlier about why aren't they adding these schools because they've got great football. But I think it's true. You got to look at, is the football good? Okay, sure, that matters. But do they help elevate the profile of the league? Academically, do they add value to the league? UMass, they're the flagship university of Massachusetts. That adds academic value. Football, they're competitive. They're a competitive program within the Mid-American Conference. We've seen that. Basketball and other Olympic sports, they elevate the profile of the conference because they've been collectively better in a better league. So you got to look at everything holistically. You can't just say they've got good football, let's add them. No, you got to look at everything. And when you look at the Learfield Directors Cup, UMass would have topped out of the Mid-American Conference this year. And Western Michigan won an ice hockey national championship. That just tells you how strong collectively their athletic department is. And that's what you have to look at. That's what you have to identify and say, where are the value adds beyond one thing? You have to look at everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point about just the whole scale look of those perspective members for sure. And it's great that you mentioned UMass too. Just again, just with them joining it and winning the Directors Cup, because the A10, just a great conference for Olympic sports. Of course, they don't have football, which honestly brings some fascination with Rhode Island too. Just that simple A10 time, because good basketball, good men's and women's basketball comes from the A10, and just that alone too. I mean, I brought up Rhode Island mainly for that, not just for the football, but just mainly for the Olympic sports tie with the A10, especially men's and women's basketball, because that's an RPI booster as well for the whole league. But I don't think it'll happen. Honestly, I think like your pipe dreams with with the Dakota schools and UConn as football only member. I don't think that the MAC's gonna go further into the Northeast, because you know then I wouldn't say we near a split, but they're definitely, I guess, a lot of the sentiments being aired on the east and western boundaries of the Sun Belt. might become aired on the MAC side if the conference takes a more Eastern skew. But I just want to know your thoughts with that there, because again, like every Northeast pundit, account, fan longs for a Group of Five Northeast conference. I'm sure, like as we speak right now, someone is creating a conference with Delaware, Army, Navy. I know my friend on the platform, Joe Flacco Burner, had put Navy, Army. I think Buffalo was in the conference too in his dynasty. So it'll be interesting to see, I guess, if the MAC does that, but I don't think they ever will. But I mean, just wanted to know your thoughts there. Um, yeah.
So I think, and this is more me spitballing. I have no information to verify this, but I think that the MAC and the other G5, G6 conferences need to put a pause on elevation. Um, and I don't say this because I don't think that there are valuable programs and valuable schools at the FCS level. No, I say this because back in the late 90s, there were 96 FBS teams, Division 1A at the time. We now have 40 more programs than we had 30 years ago at this level. And we've gotten no closer to any of those programs winning a championship. Um, the closest we've seen is Boise State making the playoffs this year. I think you could really argue the closest we've seen is Boise State TCU a few years ago in the BCS bowl game where they were 3-4, and one of them won that game. Neither was awarded a championship, and I think that's wrong. Um, I think there needs to be a pause because at some point the funding at this level is going to come to an abrupt halt. Um, ESPN is going to funnel so much money into the SEC and the Big Ten that the funding is going to dry up elsewhere, meaning travel is going to be difficult, especially as these conferences get larger and get more across country. There's going to be less funding to pay more programs. The more you have, the more you have to share. That's just simple math. We're going to see a reclassification within the next 8 years. And it's going, I think that we are going to see the true creation of an NCAA Division IV. And the Division I FBS is going to be Division I. And we're going to see about 120 teams stay Division I. If that, I think really what we're going to see is we're going to see about 80 teams stay Division I. I'm being optimistic with 120. But I think we're going to see about 80 teams stay Division I, and they are going to gatekeep Division I. Everybody else will be Division II, which will be what FCS was, and people will get relegated to that. Then Division III, which will be the former D2. Division IV will be the former D3. And what's going to happen is we're going to see a reshuffling and a reclassification across all of these programs, all 1,000 NCAA schools, broken up into 4 divisions. It's going to be bottom heavy. You're going to have 370 D4 programs, 300 plus D3 programs. So I think programs need to stop elevating, or I think conferences need to stop elevating. You put a pause on the elevation and you wait out what's going on. Because what's going to happen is we're going to see a reclassification, everything get resplit, and all these people who invested a lot of time, money, energy into getting promoted are going to get burned. Kennesaw State, I feel for you. You're going to get burned. Akron, I feel for you. You're probably going to get burned. You know, we're going to see very few Group of 5 programs stay at this level, at this Division I level. I would love to say Toledo will be one of them. I expect Liberty will probably be one of them purely because of funding. Liberty has a lot of funding. Memphis will be one that will likely stay. But there's going to be a lot that get demoted and a lot that people don't think should. And demotion's a bad word. but relegated is probably the more correct term here. But there's going to be a lot of programs like the Missouri State Grizzlies. You're going to get relegated. You know, I love that Missouri State made the push to become FBS. I do. I think it's a great push. I think a lot of these moves have been very premature, and everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie, right? If you can get to this level and show you belong, hey, maybe they'll let you say, yeah, we'll let them in to the ACC, be part of that. Within the next 8 years, there will be a new divisional reclassification system, and Division One will be gate kept under heavy lock and key. That or the SEC and Big Ten will break off entirely and do their own thing. One of those two things is happening.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. To sort of begin our close, because I do feel something like that will happen. But for me, either the optimist or not wanting to jump to conclusions and I guess scare myself as a fellow group of 5, group of 6 fan, sorry, Pac-12. I do feel something is coming, and I do know that there already is the moratorium for Division 2 schools moving up to Division 1 that's gonna take effect in 2 weeks. New Haven might be the last Division 1, I guess Division 1 call up in general, not just FCS to FBS, but Division 2 to Division 1 might be the last call up we see in a long time after this moratorium gets passed. Um, and again, I do feel the gatekeeping already happened because the United Athletic Conference, that thing, that conference got shot down a couple years ago. Their whole grand idea, to take the Wax name and use the NCAA bylaw to move up to the FBS got shot down for, I mean, not really any reason. I mean, the bylaw existed, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can see the gatekeeping start to happen, which is interesting you say that too, because, no one knows what the future is going to look like, but there's like that hope of now where if we can just squeeze out as much FBS glory as possible, we can catch lightning in a bottle. And I think for me, like Liberty in 2023, right? That school was playing in the Big South in the
Yeah.
second half of the 2010s, and they're playing in the Fiesta Bowl. Like, who cares if they got beat 45-6? Like, that is an amazing moment for that program, that honestly, like over half the FBS have not been to New Year's Six Bowl
Mm-hmm.
since, I mean, yeah, I guess either ever or since at least the 60s when, when we started, I guess when those bowls started becoming more exclusive. So, I mean, that's a special moment, if you can catch lightning in a bottle, if you can say like Kennesaw State or Missouri State before the split happens, if you're able to have all the stars align and make a New Year's bowl game, have all the stars align and make a Sweet 16 run like Ohio did back in the early 2010s or I think late 2000s. Like
Mm-hmm.
at that point, if you get relegated to whatever a division back, they might even do like 1 AA again. Like if you get demoted back to a Division 1 AA or 1 AAA, I kind of feel for those programs too, because it's like I kind of understand. It's like, because I guess you can say it was worth it in the end. I mean,
Sure.
as
Well, and
long as
I
you're
think
still standing.
you get a massive influx of cash
Yep.
if you do that, right? I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with doing so. I just think that in the long term, you benefited for a short period of time, and that's great for your school history. But if it ultimately ended up burning you in the end, how valuable was that?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good question to ask. Like that's the thing where it's like hindsight's 2020, but we just can't tell like with any of that. I mean, it's really, I don't know what other word to use, but scary and unknown,
Mm-hmm.
because no one, like absolutely no one knows what's gonna happen. Like honestly, I always say it on podcasts I'm on or even podcasts that I do where it comes up with the house settlement where it's like, I don't know what type of time you have to be reading hundreds of pages of legal documents, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna try to understand what a house settlement is, especially like too for the
Yeah.
school that I root for the most. Like house settlement means nothing to the academies because everyone's on a congressional appointment, athlete or not. Like that's something that's above the NCAA's head. So it's like, what incentive do I have as an Army fan to do that?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think unknown's a big word. I guess to tie all of this together, like every single topic from the MAC championship game moving to Cleveland all the way to MAC Northeast expansion. So
Yeah.
um yeah, Do you have anything else, Alex, to add before we I guess we start to wrap up and begin the shameless plug slash promotion part of the podcast?
I'll be honest, I don't. Like I said, I've always loved doing this with you. Always appreciate you having me on to pretend like I know what I'm talking about, and it's always a joy. Omar, you've always done really great work. It's an honor and a blessing to know you, and to kind of get to watch you to continue to grow. You've done great work with this. You've done great work with all of your writing, and it's fun to follow along.
That really means a lot, Alex. I mean, likewise too. Like I really appreciate you, and honestly, I look up to guys like you that have done this for a while, and just being able to talk and just pick your brain and just learn from people. And I always like tell my wife about the college football community. It's alive and well at times like this, just talking for over an hour about stuff that hasn't even happened, but we think might happen. So we're gonna talk about it.
Hmm.
Always a blessing, like you said, and it's just great that this sport and other things have just brought us together, just to talk about it. So, the pleasure is mine as well. And I mean, geez, like you definitely know what you're talking about. So, yeah, I guess let's just get that out of the way. Like you definitely know what you're talking about.
Well, I appreciate it. It's like I said, always an honor to join you and to be part of what you're doing. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to have me on tonight.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time too, and just bearing through all these technical difficulties, this inopportune setup and everything. But thank you again, Alex. I look forward to the next time already. And for everyone listening, hopefully, I think August 7th we got bumped up to August 7th for an install in our small town for internet. So hopefully we get bumped up again. But until next time, everyone, I'll just be releasing little stuff here and there, little short stuff that my cell phone and I guess our cell signal can upload in a timely manner until then. But thanks everyone for listening or watching, and until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul. I'm the Burger Popper, and Lord keep you, Lord bless you, Lord keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Till next time, everyone, bye.